Hi guys, I am retreating into my happy place again, which is reading books and talking about books. It's been an exceptionally hard day today, a really difficult day of online teaching, and I mean it had nothing to do with the students but just other factors that are making things really stressful. So I wanted to take my mind off of things a little bit and do a book review. This stack is books 81 through 90 that I have read in the year 2020. It's currently December 9th, I think. Yeah, December 9th. So I'm going to try to read 10 more books before December 31st. I actually already read one, so 9 more books before December 31st. I think we can do it. I think we got this. So I'm gonna actually go backwards this time. I'm gonna start with book 90 because it's my channel and I make the rules and I want to talk about that one first. So book 90 of the year 2020 that I read was Mariah Carey's memoir, The Meaning of Mariah. And most people know about me that I absolutely love Mariah Carey ever since 5th grade on the bus when I listened to her tape on a Walkman with the girl who was sitting next to me. I fell in love with Mariah Carey and pretty much, you know, my goals in life are just to be Mariah Carey. It's hard to see, but right there I have a little Mariah Carey snow globe. I have a Mariah Carey keychain. I have her makeup line that she came out with MAC. I have her perfumes. I just ordered a sweatshirt actually, an All I Want for Christmas Is You sweatshirt. I have her movie. Of course I've seen Glitter. I know all the songs, everything. And I will link down below actually a video from when I went and saw her perform in Las Vegas. So anyway, of course, I had to get her memoir. I actually listened to it on Audible, but then I also got the book just so that I have the book and so I could look at the pictures. And if you are a Mariah Carey fan, that's what I recommend. She does such a good job of reading the book and she sings a lot of it. She sings the lyrics and I just love her speaking voice. Like I love the kind of like raspy speaking voice that she has. So I definitely enjoyed listening to the audiobook, but then I'm glad I just like have this as like a memento and the pictures are really cool on the inside. This book is definitely for her fans. It's for the lambs. It's for those of us who wanted a little peek into the behind the scenes of what she was doing, especially at the beginning of her career. I would say that the majority of it is focused on like her childhood and the beginning of her career. And all of that, you know, was before social media. We really didn't have any glimpses into what life was really like for her. So there's quite a bit about her family, a lot about Tommy Mottola. I didn't realize how many songs were inspired by Derek Jeter. She spends a little bit less time with like the newer things that have happened in her life, you know, the Nick Cannon stuff and her babies, them babies and all of that. I guess because, you know, we could just like go on Instagram or Twitter or whatever and find out a little bit more about that. So she gets more into like the things that people wouldn't really have a way of knowing. But she's an excellent writer. I mean, this book is so well done. Her voice is perfect. I mean, her singing voice is perfect, of course. Her writing voice would be perfect. And she wrote pretty much all of her songs. She has such a wide discography now and so many songs, and so she gives you like the story behind a lot of the lyrics. So if you're a true fan, you've probably memorized a bunch of those lyrics, and through this book you'll get to learn the stories behind all of that. It was really cool to just like learn about her life in New York and learn about more of like her dad's side of the family, because I think people typically don't know too much about that. Well, in general, like people have kind of tried to like erase the black side of her. So I think part of this was like a project to reestablish that and talk about the black side of her family. And she talks about her mom and her brother and sister as well. So this is just one of my favorite things to read of 2020, my favorite things to listen to. And if you are also a fan, let me know down below and let me know what you think of the book. Book number 89 is another like celebrity memoir. The reason that I got this is because I love Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and Jensen loves Queen Barb from Trolls World Tour, and both of them are Rachel Bloom. This is her memoir, I Want to Be Where the Normal People Are. It's just hilarious. Like if you like the humor of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and kind of like sketch comedy and just like wild, wacky stuff, then you will like this. If you already like Rachel Bloom, then you will love this. If you don't really know who she is, like, you probably just wouldn't get it. But I guess that's the deal with most memoirs. You're not really gonna buy a memoir of somebody who you're not familiar with, but if you like Rachel Bloom, you will really like her memoir. One of the parts that stands out is the adult amusement park that she describes. I would totally go to that. She also gets into like issues of her mental health when she was a kid, and then kind of how those things changed a little bit as she became an adult. And so I think she also does a really good job of talking about that. And it's a lot of the same themes that she covers in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And I just really appreciate how she is able to talk about these kind of serious things through humor. That's really her gift. Book 88 was this one, The Seventh Most Important Thing by Shelley Pearsall. The middle school librarians in our district did a really cool thing where they all collaborated and they opened up a virtual book club for all of the middle school students in the whole district, and they invited the author to come to the book club meeting and discuss it. So I thought that was really cool. I wasn't able to attend because we had a different meeting at the same time, but all of the kids who were involved in the book club, I guess, read this one, so I wanted to read it too so that I would be able to talk to my students about it. And I posted this on Instagram, and quite a few teachers said they use it with their students and it's really great. The students really like it. There's definitely a theme of like restorative justice within this book. It's set in DC, and the main character is a 7th grader, and he gets in trouble with the police, and he's got to like kind of work off his sentence by helping out this guy. And one thing that I wish I had known earlier, like, they put it in as an afterword, is that there's like an art installation in this book, and that part of it is real. Like, that was based on a true story. So I think if you read this, it would be helpful to know that part up front. For me, it was like just okay, but it sounds like middle school students really like this book, so it will live in my classroom. Book number 87 was another audiobook. I listened to One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus, and it's one that I had been meaning to read for a long time. It was in my classroom and students were always checking it out. Yeah, I listened to that one. It's pretty cool. It is through the viewpoint of 4 different characters, and there has been a murder, so it's like a murder mystery, but it's at a high school. It's set in San Diego, and I found it to be pretty reflective of the San Diego suburbs. It's definitely, a mystery that just like keeps you guessing until the end. I didn't guess the ending. I think I kind of figured like that the people involved were the people involved, but I just, let myself be taken away into the story. It's another good one to listen to on Audible because there's 4 different readers. So with each chapter, like, the voice changes, so that's kind of cool. Your high school students and maybe 8th grade students would really like it. It's not one that like leaves you changed or anything like that, but it's like a good mystery. Book number 86 is this one right here, Rural Voices, 15 Authors Challenge Assumptions About Small Town America. I thought this book was incredible, and I really liked the representation within it, and I think this is a really good one that should be included in high school classrooms. I feel like it's pretty rare to see the type of representation that I saw in this book. I grew up in a very small town in rural America, and it is very different than an urban experience or a suburban experience. And I think that people think they understand rural America, but it's very diverse. So there are stories in here of kids who live in like Alaska and upstate New York and the South and like New Mexico. There are kids dealing with mental illness and physical illnesses, kids dealing with poverty. And one thing I also really liked is at the end where they tell you about each author, just like a little snippet about each author. They each kind of define like what rural America is to them. And one author said, like, when you're poor in a rural area, like there's nothing to steal. I don't think she said exactly like that, but there's nowhere to turn besides other people. Like, There are often very few resources or anywhere to turn, especially if you have an emergency and your situation changes drastically quickly. It can be really difficult to get help. I also liked how not all of the characters were necessarily trying to escape from their small towns. Some of them were like working very hard to get out and have a different life, but not all of them were. And so I thought that was important to include in here as well. Really cool stories. I think especially if you teach in a rural area, this is a really important mirror for your students, but then also an important window for kids who don't know what this American experience is like. This one, The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans, was one of the best books that I have read all year. I am obsessed with this book. It's set up a little bit differently than most books that I've ever read. So the beginning is a bunch of short stories, all by Danielle Evans, and then the last short story is a little bit longer, so it's technically like a novella. So the first couple of stories are all really, really good. It's kind of nice, like I can kind of see the process from the author's point of view, like let's just explore, like, what if this one thing happened? What if a character was like this and then this happened to them and they were in this setting? I just want to write about that and explore it without having to write an entire novel and fill in every single plot point and all these different characters and everything. So that's kind of what she does with those first couple of short stories. It's just like a very specific character and a very specific conflict, and you just read about that situation. It doesn't necessarily resolve, you don't get all of, you know, the backstory and everything, but it's actually really cool to just read those short stories. And then the novella at the end is called The Office of Historical Corrections, and it's almost like a science fiction setup. It's sometime in the very near future where the government has set up this thing. It's actually not called the Office of Historical Corrections, it's called something else, but that's like their nickname. And so they hire public historians to go around and correct things that are incorrect. So like she goes into a cake shop and there's a sign next to a Juneteenth cake, but it isn't accurate. So, you know, she tells the bakery owner how it really happened. It's just so fascinating. I mean, like, this is so right up my alley. Like, that would be my dream job, to get to go around correcting historical facts out in public and get paid for it. And then there's like a very specific situation that she has to go in and try to help with, and there's kind of a twist within that story. All of the short stories have to do with race, they all have to do with family, they all have to do with history and how we kind of experience that history or like see it from afar. So there's definitely that theme running through all the stories, even though there's not any other connection between them. I highly, highly, highly recommend it. Plus I just love the cover. Like, this is very on brand for me. It's just like, I love this. So definitely keeping this one, and it's really like a master class in short story writing. 84 was Long Bright River by Liz Moore. And I think this one is the most just like widely appealing of the bunch. Like, this is just kind of a more mainstream book. So it's like a crime, thriller, mystery. It's super, super well done. It ruined my life for a couple of days. Like, I couldn't get anything done because I just needed to find out what had happened. It's set in Philadelphia. The opioid epidemic is really the thing that everything centers around in the book, and there are two sisters. One of them is a cop, one of them is an addict. They haven't spoken for quite a while, so really the main character is the cop, and she's just trying to do the right thing by her sister and her family, but then also there has been this string of murders, and she has some questions about how her own people are handling it, and it's just very, very good. So if you need a book to like kind of get you back into reading because you haven't been for a little while, and you just want one that feels like a really good like thriller movie, this one's awesome. I think I read it in 2 days and didn't get anything else done. Book 83 is this one, Home Sweet Rented Home, Transform Your Home Without Losing Your Deposit by Medina Grillo, and she is on Instagram. This is kind of like a home improvement magazine in like hardcover. It gives you a bunch of really good ideas for if you rent a house or an apartment and just like ways to do some little upgrades or like add some of your own charm that aren't going to ruin the walls or the floors or whatever. So the tips themselves are really good, but I think the thing that I loved about this most is just that the fact that this exists really validates the millions of adults who rent their homes. There's nothing shameful about renting. It's not just for college students or just for people, you know, starting out. There are plenty of reasons why people rent rather than buy, particularly in like bigger cities. At the moment, it's what works best for us, and I prefer it. And I also just feel like it's so much less of like a footprint on the world. You know, like we share a building with other people, we share resources, we share a yard, we share a driveway. You know, we're not taking up as much space and land and resources and everything as we would if we had our own home and all of those things to ourselves. So it was just very cool to have this validation, and I wrote about it on Instagram, so you can actually check out reviews of all of these books on my Instagram as well. And there were a lot of really great reactions to this book, so check those out if you're interested. The best way to find them is just to search the hashtag Too Cool for Middle School Books, and lots of them come up. Book 82 is one that I recommend to everybody right now, particularly in light of the information that we now have about how a COVID vaccine is out, I guess. People in Britain are taking it. Pretty soon there will be a vaccine in the United States, I believe. This book is called On Immunity and Inoculation by Eula Bliss. It's not very long. It is about the history of vaccines and the history of medicine, but it's also like the history of the way we talk about disease and infection and the spread of disease and our body's defenses of disease. Because all of those things are metaphor. There's really no way to explain how things work on a cellular level without using metaphors that we can all understand. And so, you know, a few hundred years ago, people talked about it in a little bit different way than we do now, and people had different concerns than we do now, but they're kind of similar. So while this is a history of vaccines, sort of, it's just also a history of how we have perceived disease and vaccines and doctors and medicine and safety and freedom and independence and rights, because we have to take into account all of those things. But one of the main themes of this book is that like our bodies are not a boundary. Like my body does not necessarily just belong to me. Like I can infect other people can infect me. I can be a transporter of disease. I think as women, we're even more aware of this, like that, I don't mean this in a gross way, but like we're like permeable, you know, like all of us are. And that's really pretty scary to think about, and we don't like to think of ourselves that way, and we like to think of ourselves as independent, and that good health is a result of good choices, and that if somebody is sick, that is somehow a reflection of their hygiene or their choices or their level of education about how to stay well and stuff like that. So it's just really fascinating. This is what I'm gonna keep and like read multiple times and quote from multiple times. I think everybody should be reading it right now. And then lastly, of course, I have my book from Amory's book club for the month of November. I always read my books along with her. This one is called Luster by Raven Leilani. It's another fairly short one, and I got to attend the Instagram Live with the author. And this book, the protagonist is a Black woman who has a lot of like gross things happen to her. I think that's one of the themes of this book, is like kind of like levels of grossness. Like she has a digestive issue. She has like irritable bowel syndrome. She has kind of gross sex with a lot of the men in her office. And you kind of like clutch your pearls a little bit at some of her choices and like the situations that she's in. But then as the story continues, you see that also like her apartment in New York City is really gross, and the landlord is not making any of it better, and her situation is very precarious, and she ends up like without an apartment, and the work that she has to do as like a food delivery person. Like the setup of it all is just gross, and the way that she has no like safety net in any way is pretty gross. And her mom and dad both had really complicated situations and just like left her very unprotected, and it's just like, ugh, ew, that shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen to people or to kids. And then she ends up in this situation with like a married couple, and she's a mistress basically, but she ends up kind of just, I don't know, being even more. So that's another just like kind of ew, weird situation within the book. But it's just like all of it. Like I think part of what the author's doing in this book is just being like, okay, what is unacceptable? What shouldn't be happening to people? What is inappropriate? Because so much of what happens in this girl's life is inappropriate. How much of it is really on her? This book also has a conflict that's kind of becoming familiar in literature right now, like Little Fires Everywhere and Such a Fun Age, where there's this kind of like organized, uptight, unhappy white mom, and then like a free-spirited, not very financially stable Black woman who takes care of their kids in some way, or like assists them in their domestic duties in some way. And I think there's just like a lot to mine in that relationship and like conflict and weirdness. So this is another one that does that. So if you liked Such a Fun Age and Little Fires Everywhere, you know, the whole Kerry Washington, Reese Witherspoon thing, this is kind of similar. Okay, so that is all of them. This is all 9 plus an invisible audiobook right there. I've got reviews of 80 other ones this year in 2020, plus all of the books I read in 2019 and 2018, so plenty of book review content for you. I will do one more of these videos this year, and hopefully it will get us up to 100, and then I think I'll do like a best of 2020 video as well. So thank you so much for joining me today. Like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff, and I will see you later. Bye.